Try to get better signal. Got mini blinds blinding me with sunlight. Oh well. Okay. I did a stream earlier, you might catch that. It was about John Bunyan and how you live. Your living conditions. My living conditions. And Jacqueline's living conditions. And Stephen's living conditions. And one man told me, this is interesting. Brother Stephen said this. He said, Jerry, you know, it seems that everybody that God has used these last days is poorer than a church mouse. Don't have two nickels rubbed together, and that's the truth of it, you know. But that's the way God works, you know. He uses the nothing of the world to confound the things that think they are. He brings to nothing the things that think they exist. He brings to nothing the things that are. Brings to not the things that are. 1 Corinthians 1, read the whole chapter. It's awesome. It's about me, you know. Yeah. Thinking about me, there's a movie about me. I'm just going to tell you this, you can watch it or not. You can pull the transcript online and read the whole transcript, that's good. You know, the verbiage. Lego, the movie. A little guy named Emmett. Emmett is me. He's an invisible person, nobody sees him, nobody cares about him, nobody says hi to him, nobody knows he exists. That's me. But he was the one that was chosen to be given the peace of resistance. So I'm just speaking that into existence. That's me. If you want to be around the peace of resistance, let me know. All right. We are on book 3 of the Spirit Flyer series about magic bicycles. Yes, they're magic bicycles. This is the forces of good are magic and the forces of evil are tragic. It's magic versus tragic. And if you don't like the idea of magic, oh well. It's just make-believe, people. It's an allegory. It's not real. It's not talking about demonic magic stuff, so oh well. I'll just say that as a caveat, whatever. This one has 23 chapters. 205 pages. Okay. The bike came back. Get some light on my book would be nice. And reflect off onto my face. That would be really nice. There we go. That might work. The bike came back, chapter 1. Some things don't add up. Once there was a town where everyone was so busy counting things that they forgot what really counted. Centerville was a small, friendly town. There were many friendly grown-ups and friendly children. There were even friendly dogs and cats and a few nice horses. Life was fairly peaceful in Centerville, but things were changing. Toward the end of the summer, the old factory on the west edge of town opened back up. Goliath Industries were the new owners. People were moving into Centerville, something that hadn't happened for a long, long time, I'm thinking. A long time, yeah. In fact, so many new people were moving into town that there were houses being built for the first time in 20 years. The Bailey family was one of the first families to arrive. The moving truck was parked in front of a house on Oak Street. The Saturday morning was warming up quickly since it was the week of August, the hottest time of the year in Centerville and in Missouri, Stockton, Missouri, Kaplinger Mills, Missouri. The last box was rolled out of the moving dock. Crud. I forget it to turn the AC off. If you'll do that, I might even start over. I don't know. Sorry, darn it. Okay. What's that? Come on. Do what I tell you to do. There you go. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Stand up. Come on, stand up. Wish I had a remote. I don't. Oh, come on. Don't hit the phone, don't hit the cord. Don't knock anything down, don't make a noise. Engage core. Should have pointed the fan this way, that would help. But I'm not going to bother with it. I'm only going to read for about 15-20 minutes. Diddle-dee-dee, Millie. Okay. There we ends all is. Where you all is. Alright, so to start over, kind of, sort of, since I was not probably heard very well, I'm going to start over. The bike came back. Some things don't add up. Once there was a town where everyone was so busy counting things that they forgot what really counted. Centerville was a small, friendly town. There were many friendly grown-ups and friendly children. There were even friendly dogs and cats, and a few nice horses. Life was fairly peaceful in Centerville, but things were changing. Toward the end of the summer, the old factory on the west edge of town opened back up. Goliath Industries were the new owners. People were moving into Centerville, something that hadn't happened for a long, long time. So many people were moving in that the town that new houses were being built for the first time in 20 years. The lights reflect off the book. Up to the bingy thumber. Oh, there you go. Yeah. Okay. Kill two birds with one stone. Build two curds with one stone. Okay, the Bailey family was one of the first families to arrive. The big moving truck was parked in front of a house on Oak Street. The Saturday morning was warming up quickly since it was the first week of August, the hottest time of the year in Centerville and in Missouri and everywhere. The last box was rolled out of the moving truck. Upstairs in the house, Daniel Bailey was unpacking boxes in his new room when he heard his mother yell out his name. Something about the tone of her voice didn't sound right. The boy moved with a noticeable limp across his room out into the hallway. Daniel held carefully onto the railing as he went downstairs. "Hold it right there, young man," Mrs. Bailey said at the bottom of the steps. She put her hands on her hips and blocked his way. Daniel stopped. He looked at his mother's stern face, then looked down at his sneakers. Only his mother, he thought, could make you feel guilty even before you were accused. "I want to show you something," Mrs. Bailey said. "Okay," Daniel said curiously. He brushed his hand through his bright red hair. The boy had startling clear green eyes and a face full of freckles. Irish. He followed his mother to the garage. When he saw the old red bicycle, the boy's eyes lit up, and a huge smile crossed his face. "It came," he cried. He squatted down, running his hands over the metal, checking for damage. The bike, though old, appeared to be okay. Below the handlebars were 3 golden crowns linked together. On the middle bar, in flowing white letters, was the name Spirit Flyer. Daniel pushed up the kickstand and rolled the big bike back and forth. Spirit Flyer's big balloon tires rolled easily. Though the bike was something of an antique, it was still very usable condition. An old cracked mirror was fastened to the handlebars along with a big horn with a rubber bulb. A gear shift lever, a gauge that looked something like a speedometer, and a large headlight. A small bottle-shaped generator was attached to the metal frame that held the back tire. He hopped on, then pedaled in a small circle in the driveway. Daniel couldn't stop smiling. He was so happy to see the old bike. You would have thought it was an old friend, which in a way it was. He then rolled it back into the garage, parking it next to another bike that was already resting on its kickstand. The other bike couldn't have been more different from the old red bike. It was a new, sleek 10-speed, shining with gold metallic paint and black trim. The wheels were made of some of the strongest yet lightest alloy available. All the other metal parts were coated in rich, shiny chrome. On the middle bar, written in black letters, was the name Goliath Super Wings. This is what Barry Smedlow wanted to get and never got. Daniel didn't seem to notice the new bike. He was still so surprised and happy to see the Spirit Flyer that he just kept smiling. But the smile left his freckled face when he saw his mother. She was standing on the lawn in her high heels talking to the moving men. Even though it was Saturday morning, she wore her high heels and a skirt as if she were at work. His mom was always dressed up, he thought. Her black hair was combed into a bun, and she had on her makeup. His 10-year-old sister, Denise, was standing next to his mom. Denise wore a green dress and good shoes. Daniel was wearing his frazzled old blue jeans, sneakers and a ragged green t-shirt. He knew his mother didn't approve, but he liked his old clothes because they were comfortable. Good makings of a redneck, a hillbilly. Mrs. Bailey motioned for Daniel to come over. I got that on. I don't know if I can do. Headlight. I'm not going to bother with it. Okay. This thing good enough? Oh well. You can kind of see my voice, You can kind of see my voice, my mouth, my lips. Read my lips. No new Texas. Mrs. Bailey smiled, motioned for Daniel to come over. Denise was smiling. She sensed Daniel was in trouble, and she was enjoying every second of it. None of these men packed that bicycle in the truck, Mrs. Bailey said as Daniel walked over, and neither did Denise, so that leaves you. You deliberately sneaked that old bike on after I told you we would bring it later. I didn't pack it, Daniel said truthfully. He looked at his mother's face. He didn't look away, or he knew she would think he was lying. And don't look down to the left, because that's when you're lying. Mrs. Bailey stared at Daniel in silence for a long time. Come on. One page, come on, one page. Mrs. Bailey stared at Daniel in silence for a long time. Her mouth was one little tight line. The moving men got into the truck. The big truck roared to life and then rumbled down the street. Then I suppose you're going to tell me it packed itself on the truck and rolled into the garage by itself, Mrs. Bailey said. Well, it got here somehow, Daniel replied innocently. Maybe it just came by itself like when I first got it. Mrs. Bailey opened her mouth to reply but seemed speechless. She stared at the bicycle uneasily for a moment, as if remembering something. Then she frowned at her son. Daniel, we are new to this town, and I hoped we would be getting off to a good start, Mrs. Bailey said. I know it's been hard on you children since the divorce, but you live with me, not your father, and you abide by my rules. I took the job with Goliath Industries to get you kids out of the city into a small town, but we aren't even unpacked, and you're already causing problems again with that stupid old bicycle. Didn't I get you a perfectly good, brand new Goliath bicycle? I don't want another bicycle, Daniel said softly, but his mother wasn't listening. You live in a dream world with that old bike, and I don't like it, Mrs. Bailey said crossly. It's time you woke up. A little pretending is fine, but you've gone way past that, and now you're lying about it. I'm not lying, Daniel said. I didn't sneak it into the truck. The Spirit Flyer belongs to me, or you might say I belong to it. You just don't understand how a Spirit Flyer really... That's enough, Mrs. Bailey snapped. I'll make a decision about it later. We need to be over at the school athletic field in 10 minutes. What for, Daniel asked. School isn't started yet. That's for the company sports league, Mrs. Bailey said. I told you all about it. Goliath Industries always sponsors the sports league as a gesture of community goodwill when they move into a town. This time it's a soccer league. Yippee-ki-yay. Okay. How well you can see that, but there's the gear shift lever, the horn, the light, and something that looks like a speedometer. The instruments, the Spirit Flyer instruments. So Goliath Industries is sponsoring a soccer league. We'll find out how that affects Daniel in un momento. Gadian, how you doing there, buddy? Okay. I don't want to play, Daniel said. Now don't be difficult, Daniel. Oh. You'll have fun. They'll be giving away free toys as a promotion, but I don't want to play soccer. You have to run the entire time. Dr. Baker said you're perfectly able to run now, Mrs. Bailey said. But I'll still limp all over the place, Daniel said. I'll look like a cripple out there. Don't say cripple, Mrs. Bailey said. You have to have a positive attitude, Daniel. You have a slight limp from an unfortunate accident, that's all. You can do everything the other kids do. That's easy for you to say, Daniel replied softly. He had had the same argument with his mother before, and he always lost. And he knew he was going to lose again. You used to be captain of your old soccer team, a real superstar. Don't you remember, Mrs. Bailey asked? She looked off in the distance. for a moment as if she were looking back at a better time in life. I know, I remember, I was so proud of you then. You'll get your confidence back then. That's all that's holding you back. Right, other than the injury. Daniel started to say something else and then stopped. He knew it was no use. His mother was in a dream world of her own, he thought. She always wanted things to be the way they used to be before the accident. Since she was already mad because of the Spirit Flyer, he just kept quiet. Mrs. Bailey looked up, locked up the house and garage. As they drove off, Denise and his mother were talking excitedly in the front seat. Daniel slouched down in the back seat. Every child in town will be signing up for the sports league, Mrs. Bailey said to Daniel, looking at him in the rearview mirror. This will be a good way to meet people. Besides, it wouldn't look right if the children of Goliath's personnel manager didn't participate in the events sponsored by the company. That's the most important reason, isn't it? Daniel asked. Mrs. Bailey glared at her son. Listen, Mr. Daniel Bailey, she said shrilly.
Listen, Mr. Daniel Bailey.
I know it's not easy to move to a new place and make new friends, but Goliath Industries pays the bills around here, and there's nothing wrong in showing a little appreciation and cooperation. To get along, you have to go along. Got it? Daniel just nodded and sat quietly the rest of the way to school. The parking lot at the Centerville school was packed. Daniel didn't think so many people could possibly live in Centerville, but then he figured some of the children lived on farms around the town. Daniel had never known anyone who lived on a farm. He had lived in a city or the suburbs all his life. Mrs. Bailey got out of the car and immediately smiled and waved at someone she knew. Perhaps, she said to her children, you need to mingle. Daniel and Denise got out of the car. Mrs. Bailey was smiling and saying hello to different people as they walked by. Daniel was surprised at the number of people his mother already knew. She was good at remembering names since it was part of her job as personnel manager. Just then a whistle blew. A man in gym shorts and a jersey stood up on a platform. He wore a whistle around his neck. That's Coach Carruthers, Mrs. Bailey said. We better go. I'll listen from here, Daniel said, then moving under the shade of a large tree. Coach Carruthers greeted everyone and then began explaining how the new sports league would work. When the coach finally finished talking, Cyrus Cutright, the plant manager, stood up to speak. Daniel had seen Mr. Cutright before. He was a tall, thin man with gray hair. His face was like leather and full of wrinkles. He seemed about 150 years old and reminded Daniel of an old dried-up stick that could talk. But there was something in the eyes of Mr. Cutright that showed everyone he was the boss, even if he was old. His eyes could look right through you. Daniel didn't like to be around Mr. Cutright because he had seen those eyes up close once before, and that was enough. A Goliath Industries character. After Mr. Cutright sat down in a metal folding chair, an old woman named Mrs. Happy was introduced. She seemed kind, sort of like a grandmother or Mrs. Santa Claus. Daniel didn't pay attention until she mentioned the word toys. Then he listened. She was the owner of the local toy store. She was going to give out some toys and other things to all the newcomers. Then another man stood up to speak. The top of his head was bald and he wore black-rimmed glasses. He was introduced as Mr. Smedlow, the school principal. I know I speak not only for Centerville School District, but for the whole community, as I welcome Goliath Industries and all the newcomers to our fair town, Mr. Smedlow said. The people began to applaud. I think I cut this in half last time. I'm going to do that again because I'm tired. Two more pages. Oh well. I'll get it through. Okay, I'm going to tough it through. My back hurts. Mr. Smedlow smiled and applauded too. Finally, the clapping stopped. Mr. Smedlow kept talking. Daniel leaned against a tree. He looked at all the people and wondered if it would be hard to make friends. Daniel had left two very good friends in the city. He knew he would miss them a lot. Daniel was remembering some of the bike rides he and his friends had gone on. Thinking about the Spirit Flyer, this boy was soon lost in his own thoughts. The crowd's applause woke Daniel from his daydream. The people were walking over to rows of tables and lining up. He saw his mother waving at him. She wanted him to come to her. Daniel sighed and walked over. You get in line at table number 4, Mrs. Bailey said. Denise is already over there. And please smile a little. People in a small town will think you're a snob if you don't smile. Daniel limped over to the table where he saw Denise. The other kids watched him limping. Some began whispering to each other. Daniel looked down at his feet, so he wouldn't see them. He got in line behind his sister. Denise was talking happily to the girl she had just met. I think he's the one, someone said behind Daniel. Daniel turned in time to see a boy with sandy hair get in line. The boy smiled in a friendly way. My name's John, the boy said to Daniel. You're new here, right? Yeah, I'm Daniel, he replied. A girl standing up to the side joined the line. She took off her glasses and looked at Daniel squarely in the eyes. She had brown hair and was a little taller than the boy. With or without glasses, Daniel thought she was quite pretty. He tried not to stare. This is Susan, John said. She's my cousin. Hi, Daniel. Let me see if I can lower this down a little bit. I did that before, too. See if it stays on, huh? Hi, Daniel said. Daniel was about to say something else when he reached the front of the line. I don't think you want to take one of those number cards, Susan whispered. What? Daniel asked, puzzled. Before he could say anything, his mother walked over. She pulled Daniel by his shoulders up to the woman behind the table. Daniel wanted to talk more to the new boy and girl, but he was locked in his mother's arms. Hello, Mrs. Happy. These are my children, Denise and Daniel, Mrs. Bailey said. This is Mrs. Happy, the owner of the toy store here in Centerville. She sells a lot of Goliath toys. That's right, the old woman said with a smile. On her shoulder sat a black crow. Daniel blinked in surprise. And this old bird is my friend, Nail. Oh, Daniel said, formerly Mr. whatever his name was. Oh, Daniel said. He looked closely at the old woman and crow. Something made him feel uneasy. Then he noticed a big black box behind the woman. The box seemed to be a 5-foot cube. On the side facing the line was a large 3-foot white circle with a white X inside. The center of the X was a hole about the size of a soccer ball. Daniel stared at the white circled X and grew more and more uncomfortable. Why is that circled X on that thing? Daniel asked. Just step right here, the old woman said as if she didn't hear Daniel's question. She gave both Denise and Daniel a black rectangular piece of plastic. Put your number in that slot and put your face up to the hole. There will be a flashlight. It's like someone taking your picture. Then go on to the back and get your number card. Then you can go over to the table, the truck, and get your 2 free toys. Denise put the odd black number card into the slot. When she put her face in the hole, there was a quick flash. Denise rubbed her eyes and walked around behind the box. Daniel waited, staring at the circled X. His mother frowned at him. Please hurry, young man, Mrs. Happy said. Others are waiting. Pressure, pressure, pressure. The devil always pushes. I don't want to, Daniel said softly. He tried to see the face of the new girl and boy he had just met, but his mother blocked his view. Daniel, don't be silly, his mother said. The others are waiting. But you don't understand, Daniel said. I've seen the sign of that white circled X before. Come now, child. It only takes a second, the old woman said with a soothing smile, and it doesn't hurt a bit. Why do I need a number card? Daniel said. All the children have them, Mrs. Happy said. They're sort of like credit cards. You will need them to register on the big board, too. Please hurry. We have more children to process. What's a big board? The boy said. Step up right here to the FEMA camp. Just do as you're told, Mrs. Bailey whispered angrily. You're holding up the line. Daniel looked at the smiling old woman and then at his frowning mother. He sighed and stepped forward. He put the piece of plastic in the slot and his face up to the dark hole. The flash made him see spots. He was still half blinded as he walked around the back of the big box. The boy with black hair was putting something in a huge metal bin. He gave Daniel the number card. Daniel was surprised to see a shadowy image of his own face deep within the plastic card. But what was even more surprising was the face in the card was grinning. Daniel was sure he hadn't been smiling when he had his face up to the circled white X. He stared at the smiling face. Something deep inside the boy told him he had just made a big, bad mistake. Okay. That was chapter 1. I did that one before, but I'm redoing it because I thought that was book 2, and it wasn't. And somebody pointed it out. Zapped and Kaboom pointed out that he thought that was book 3, and it was book 3. So I'm reading it again. Oh, well. Life is hard. Okay. God bless everybody. Anybody talking to me tonight? Wow, wow, wow. Miracles happen, huh? Fiddle. Tony, hi. Caddy Ann, hi. Yeah, Cow Patty. 40 shots were fired. 40 people fell. Patty and that cow.